The second part of the poem relates the winning of Hera. She, the queen of the Amazons, ruler of Olympus and of the earth inhabited by man, mortal herself, is by fate's decree compelled to yield her person empowered to him among the immortals who shall come out the victor in 3 contests. In all of these, in the interpretation of dreams, in the gift of song, and in steering the chariot, Apollo, the god of light and beauty, easily defeats his rivals. His then should be Hera's hand, his the royal crown of Olympus, but that would little suit the purpose of Annake, who needs a ruler of coarser, sterner fiber, one more like himself. His choice is Zeus. Others are noble of heart than he, greater of soul. Of all the suitors, he is the most odious to Hera, for he alone has the essential qualities to win, an inordinate love of power and an absolute unscrupulousness in seeking his end. While the people are offering prayers of thanks for Apollo's victory, Zeus, his meaner rival, stealthily picks his way to Hera's castle. Urged on and shielded by the demon Gorgo, he forces an entrance. He foully murders a gentle hind, which approaches him with her big childlike eyes. And now the castle, and with it the kingship, is his. For Hera, no less ambitious and unscrupulous than he, when once she realizes that Zeus alone will rule, is quick to betray the noble Apollo to whom she has plighted her troth. Still more despicable is her treachery in delivering her faithful Amazons into the hands of her enemies, as part of a bargain to obtain full recognition as queen. Zeus, by winning Hera, is now in undisputed possession of the throne, but the curse of the crime weighs heavily on him, and a bitter disillusionment has already come to him, for when, after possessing himself of the castle, he stands on its battlements to survey his domain, it is but a dreary sight. Here from the world's own roof, what cold and dreary waste, and the breath of earth, how bitter to my taste. End quote. But as from below, toiling, suffering humanity recognizes in Zeus its new ruler. Then, to his shuddering ear, came plaints from far away. O Zeus, what is the meaning of our mortal day? End quote. When he has no answer to give, the cries grow louder and louder, until at last the castle is surrounded and beset by an angry, desperate mass of mortals, still demanding a reply. We hold thee fast, thine answer now, no more delay. Tell us wherefore and why, what means this mortal day? End quote. The rebellious host is driven back, and Zeus remains shuddering at what he has seen and heard. The nobler part of his nature is not unresponsive to the piteous appeal of his new wards, and he solemnly vows to open his heart to their sorrows. Nor does he fail to realize the limits set him by his own nature and by the character of his task. Be his rule never so wise, it is still subject to Annake's heartless decrees. To make this world tolerable, he needs the help of another, of the god of life and beauty, Apollo, who, cheated out of his victory, has left Olympus in resentment and disgust. Zeus appeals to him. This world beset with ills, stained with blood, needs a glimpse of heaven, needs beauty and imagination. Share my rule with me. In the noise and bustle of this world, in its stress and strife, I will wield the dread rod of ordained necessity. Thine be in ethereal radiance, the realm of beauty through which the creative mind wafts the melody of its music. Apollo is won over, the pact is concluded, and this reconciliation of power and beauty ushers in the real Olympian springtide. To this glorious interval, which the dread rule of necessity has vouchsafed the world, is given the third part of the poem. It is superinscribed the festal era and represents the culmination of the poet's story. As long as Zeus and Hera find happiness, unalloyed in each other's love, so long shall last the world's springtide feast, during which all the gods shall be free to follow their heart's desires. Hence, it is their exploits of which the poet sings. With a marvelous exuberance of imagination, he unfolds picture after picture. Some of these, like Boreas with his lash and Poseidon with the thunderbolt, are full of the joy of life and action, by their gorgeous coloring as well as by their occasional reveling in the fantastic and even grotesque. They remind one vividly of some of Bachman's famous paintings. Others, like Dionysius the Seer, are profoundly sad, yet inspiring tales of self-sacrificing idealisms or love. Still another group tells of victorious conflicts which power is hostile to light and liberty and beauty. Whether these be antiquated superstitions enthralling the minds and hearts of man, or the equally noxious self-conceit and self-assumption of spiritual plebeianisms, it must not be, however, inferred from this characterization, which cannot attempt more than the merest outline, that the poet ever loses himself in allegory. Even where the reader cannot fail to detect the deeper meaning of a story, its primary appeal lies in its purely poetic beauty. In this remarkable wreath of little epics, there is not one which does not first of all fulfill what a great German critic has called the purpose of an all-epic poetry, to satisfy our pleasure in splendid events, while those of the second and third group, as characterized above, go far beyond this in their appeal to what is finest in our feelings and loftiest in our aspirations. A good example of this is the story of Apollo the Discoverer. Taken merely as epic poetry, it is a fascinating description of a great exploit, so realistically told, so convincing in all its marvelous details, that it holds us spellbound by this alone. The deeper meaning, however, is unmistakable. Apollo, the god of light and beauty, is aroused by his demon from lethargy due to his noble disgust with the baseness and meanness of this world. This demon is, of course, Apollo's own higher self, which rebels against the dreading torpor of pessimism. If this symbolism in no way affects the poetic illusion, this demon is as real to us as is Apollo himself. Again, Apollo's achievements itself is profoundly symbolic. Accompanied by noble Artemis, one as pure of soul as himself, he steers his chariot in a bold flight to Metacosmos, a world beyond this common world, where neither baseness, nor pettiness, nor malice, nor envy is known. Unlike distant Neon, it is not merely a land of hope. No, Metacosmos can be found by the few who are chosen. In other non-symbolic words, there must be and always will be great seers, poets, and prophets though there will never be more than few. But even those who, unlike Apollo, fail in the final feat, win their reward and their glory in having believed in the land of Metacosmos and in having had the heart to attempt the journey there. This is beautifully expressed in the demon's greeting as victorious Apollo enters the realm of Metacosmos. Melodiously shall mount and veil reach o thy renown. By now Apollo, victor of fame, accept the crown. Thrice shall its royal radiance thee, conqueror, extol. Thou hast the faith that marks thy noblest of soul. Thou hast the will to win that proves a hero's heart, and thine the deed thou art from thousands set apart. End quote. If in Apollo's voyage of discovery, the festal era attains its zenith, it ends with Aphrodite's exploit. Spitteler's Aphrodite, like her classic prototype, was the goddess of love, and is such wonderfully beautiful. But it is not the beauty and love of Apollo and Artemis, it is of a far lower earthly type. A beautiful woman, all too conscious of her irresistibility, turning the heads of men with consummate skill, then reveling in the helplessness of her victims, such as Aphrodite. Being, however, mischievous rather than malicious, playful rather than cruel, she does not, like Hera, represent the demonic type of woman. Nevertheless, her rather enjoyable recklessness in turning things topsy-turvy in the world below, and her proud boast of being the real ruler of things terrestrial excite the displeasure of Annake. The ruler of things terrestrial excite the displeasure of Annake, who resolves to put an end to all this dilly-dallying by rousing Zues from happy inaction to a sense of responsibility. This brings us to the last part of the epic, which relates how, from bitter disillusion, as a lover from utter disgust with mankind, Zeus rises to a truer conception of his duty toward a blindly groping, suffering humanity, pitiable in its pathetic plight rather than contemptible for its failings. Since it has been decreed that the festal era should last as long as Zeus and Hera's love, it is Annake's first move to poison Hera's heart against her lord and lover. Seemingly, then, the rupture which follows is due to a cruel decree of fate. But we recognize in the gradual estrangement of king and queen the old story of aversion begotten of satiety. It is the death of a love which, unlike that of Apollo and Artemis, is carnal rather than spiritual. When its flickering flame finally dies, it leaves Hera, whose gross selfishness is incapable of a nobler conception of life, utterly without anything to live for, and for that very reason she now becomes obsessed with the horrible fear of death. In wild desperation she wanders from place to place, seeking to avert the inevitable, until at last she flees, affrighted from a sight which deprives her of all hope. It is a vision in which the poet once more symbolizes the dreadful cruelty of life. Mounted on a steed of steel, pitiless Annake, himself an iron colossus, belching flame and smoke, thunders along his course. Before him on his track, a million little specks seem to be moving. What are they? Worms? No, not worms, but creatures endowed with reason. They're swinging banners, shouting, "Onward to the fight, for good against the bad, and wrong must yield to right." They talk of folly's woe, of wisdom's blessed wheel, and clanging comes the monster upon its steed of steel. A shout of terror, then they're crushed, a cry of pain, a smoking, choking stench, and on it flies again. End quote. Hera stands aghast at the appalling spectacle. A nobler soul would now be lifted up to a lofty resignation, would lose its own grief in an all-embracing compassion. But far from rising above her wretched selfishness, Hera now kindles in her own heart a venomous hatred, not of Annake, against whom she is impotent, but of helpless humanity. She still is queen and powerful. If she must suffer, she will avenge herself by making others suffer. She will be as cruel as Annake himself.